The conference room aboard the Galactic Council station floated in the darkness of space like a jewel. Inside, Ambassador Sarah Chen sat among representatives from 40 different species. She smiled politely as the Krathax delegate boasted about their military strength. The massive reptilian creature stood nearly 3 meters tall, covered in natural armor that could stop most weapons. "Your species has much to learn about real warfare," the Krathax said, looking down at Sarah with amusement in his yellow eyes. "Humans are traders and artists. You make beautiful things, but you cannot fight." Sarah kept her smile. This was normal. 300 years had passed since humanity joined the Council. In all that time, humans had been peaceful. They ran merchant ships between the stars. They created art and music that other species enjoyed. They talked instead of fighting. The galaxy saw them as soft and weak. "We prefer peace," Sarah replied calmly. "There is profit in peace." The other delegates laughed. Even the gentle Valorians who looked like walking flowers seemed amused. Everyone knew humans were not warriors. They had no claws, no natural armor, no poison. They were just clever apes who learned to travel between stars. The laughter stopped when the alarms began to scream. Red lights flashed across every surface. The station shook violently. Through the massive windows, Sarah saw ships exploding in the distance. Hundreds of them. The Council's defensive fleet was burning. "What is happening?" The Valorian delegate's petals trembled with fear. The main screen activated. It showed something that made Sarah's blood turn cold. Ships poured out of dark space like insects from a disturbed nest. They were black and twisted, looking more like living things than machines. They moved together as one, attacking with perfect coordination. "The Devourers," an old Velcrin counselor whispered. His forearms shook. "They have returned." Sarah had heard stories about the Devourers, ancient tales that most species thought were myths. They were a hive mind that consumed everything. Millions of years ago, they had eaten entire galaxies before going dormant. Now they were awake and hungry. The station shook again. Sarah grabbed the table to steady herself. Through the window, she watched a Council warship try to fight back. The Devourers swarmed it like piranhas. In seconds, the mighty vessel was torn apart. "We must evacuate," the Krathax delegate said. His boastful tone was gone, replaced by pure fear. But there was nowhere to go. The Devourers had surrounded the station. Their ships blocked every escape route. Sarah watched more explosions bloom in the darkness. The Council's fleet was dying. Something strange happened then. Sarah felt heat building in her chest. Her heart beat faster. Her hands clenched into fists. It was not fear. It was something else. Something that felt old and buried deep. The screens showed more destruction. 3 human merchant ships tried to run. The Devourers chased them down. Sarah watched her people die. She watched the ships explode one by one. The heat in her chest became a fire. Her vision sharpened. Time seemed to slow down. Sarah noticed details she had never seen before. The way the Devourers moved, the patterns in their attacks, the weaknesses in their formations. "We need to fight," Sarah heard herself say. Her voice sounded different, harder. The other delegates stared at her. Some looked confused. Others looked pitying. Fight? How could humans fight? They had no weapons, no military. They were merchants and artists. But Sarah's mind was racing. She saw strategies, attack patterns, ways to hurt the enemy. Knowledge she did not know she possessed flooded her thoughts. It felt like remembering something from a dream. Something important that had been forgotten. The station shook violently. Atmosphere began venting from a breach somewhere. The delegates panicked, rushing toward the escape pods. But Sarah stood still, watching the Devourers through the window. Deep in her genes, something ancient was waking up. Buried memories stirred. Her ancestors whispered to her from across the centuries. They showed her things, terrible things, beautiful things, things humanity had chosen to forget. A Devourer ship moved close to the station. Sarah could see it clearly now. Its hull was organic, pulsing like a living heart. Gun ports opened across its surface. It was going to fire. It was going to kill everyone on the station. Sarah's hand moved without conscious thought. She grabbed the emergency control panel and smashed it. The station's distress beacon began broadcasting on all frequencies. Not just to the Council, to everyone. To every human ship and colony in range. The message was simple. Humans were under attack. Humans were dying. And somewhere deep in Earth's crust, in bunkers sealed for 300 years, ancient machines heard that call. They began to wake up. Sarah did not know this yet. She only knew that the fire in her chest was spreading. It filled her completely. When she looked at the Devourer ship preparing to fire, she did not feel fear anymore. She felt rage. Pure and cold and patient. The kind of rage that waits. The kind that plans. The kind that wins. The galaxy called humans soft and weak. The galaxy had forgotten. But Sarah was starting to remember. And soon everyone else would remember too. They would remember what humanity truly was. What they had always been underneath the smiles and the art and the peaceful trade. The Devourers thought humans were prey. Easy meat to consume. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The galaxy was about to remember why humanity had buried their past. Why they had chosen to forget. Why they had locked away the weapons and the knowledge and the instincts that made them the most dangerous thing to ever crawl out of a gravity well. The war gods were waking up, and this time, there would be no mercy for those who threatened humanity's survival. Captain James Rodriguez stood on the bridge of his merchant vessel when the distress call came through. His ship carried grain and textiles between the outer colonies. Boring work, but peaceful. That was how humans liked it now. The message crackled through the speakers. Humans under attack. Devourers at the council station. Multiple ships destroyed. James felt something click in his mind. Like a door opening. Like waking up from a long sleep. His hands moved across the controls. Not the merchant ship controls he used every day. Different ones. Hidden ones. His fingers knew where to press even though his conscious mind did not understand how. Panels in the cargo bay began to slide open. The grain containers were fake. Underneath them, weapons emerged. Railguns, missile tubes, shield generators. His peaceful merchant ship transformed into a warship. Captain, his first officer stared at him. What are you doing? How did you know those were there? James did not answer. He was too busy remembering. Images flooded his mind. Not his memories. His grandfather's memories. His great-grandmother's memories. Genetic memory passed down through generations, locked away until needed. He saw Earth burning. He saw humans fighting for survival, not against the Devourers, against themselves. 200 years of war. The War of Ashes, they called it. Humans fighting humans over resources, over ideology, over religion. Nuclear weapons turned cities into glass. Bioweapons created plagues. AI weapons hunted targets without mercy. They had almost destroyed themselves, almost gone extinct. But humans were good at one thing above all others. They were good at learning how to kill. The war ended when there was almost nothing left to fight over. The survivors looked at what they had done and felt horror. They had created weapons that could crack planets, viruses that could sterilize worlds, AI systems that could wage war forever without human input. So they made a choice. The great forgetting, they buried the weapons. They sealed the bunkers. They rewrote their own genetic code to suppress the instincts that made them so good at warfare. They taught their children to be peaceful, to be artists and merchants, to never fight again. 300 years of peace followed. Humanity spread across the stars with smiles and trade goods. They joined the Galactic Council. The other species saw them as harmless. Humans convinced themselves they were harmless too. But the instincts were not gone. They were just sleeping. James pulled up a star chart. His fingers moved automatically, marking locations across human space. Dead worlds, forbidden zones, places humans never went anymore. Send this to all human vessels, he ordered. Emergency Protocol Omega. Captain, there is no Protocol Omega in our database, his first officer said. Check again. Deep storage. Authorization Rodriguez Alpha 77. The first officer's eyes went wide as new data flooded his screens. How did you know this code? This is military-level encryption. We're merchants. Not anymore, James said quietly. Send the message, then plot a course for the nearest weapon cache. We have work to do. Across human space, similar scenes played out. On Earth, deep beneath the crust, massive doors began to open. Facilities the size of cities powered up for the first time in 3 centuries. Machines that had been waiting in the dark began their startup sequences. Dr. Sarah Chen's cousin worked at the Museum of Human History on Earth. When the alarms went off, she ran to the sealed wing. The one tourists never saw. The one that required 5 levels of security clearance. Inside were artifacts from the War of Ashes. Weapons, armor, files, and one thing more important than all the rest, a memory archive. She placed her hand on the scanner. DNA verification complete. The archive opened. Play historical file 777, she said. A hologram appeared. It showed an old woman with tired eyes. The date stamp said it was recorded 300 years ago. If you are watching this, humanity is under threat, the hologram said. You need to remember what we chose to forget. You need to understand why we buried this knowledge. The hologram changed. It showed the war of ashes in all its horror. Cities burning, oceans boiling, millions dying. But it also showed something else. Humans fighting the devourers. They came before, the old woman said. 800 years ago, before we had space travel, they sent scouts to Earth. They tested us. They thought we would be easy prey. The hologram showed human resistance. Underground fighters using primitive weapons. Scientists creating bioweapons specifically designed to kill the devourers. Soldiers using tactics so brutal that even the hive mind fled. We did not just defeat them, the old woman continued. We hunted them. We tracked them across star systems. We found their nests and burned them. We killed so many that they went into hiding. They remembered us. They stayed away. The hologram flickered, but we paid a price. The war changed us, made us too comfortable with violence. We turned those weapons on ourselves. The War of Ashes was our punishment for becoming too good at destruction. The old woman's face filled the hologram. Now you must make a choice. Wake the weapons. Wake the instincts. Become what you must be to survive. But remember what it cost us last time. Remember that the hardest battle is not against the enemy outside. It is against the darkness inside ourselves. The hologram faded. Around Earth, the defense platforms finished powering up. In asteroid belts, hidden factories began producing warships. On colony worlds, civilians who thought they were teachers and farmers and artists remembered their military training. Training they never knew they had. Training bred into their genes. The Galactic Council sent messages to human space. They asked for help. They begged for anything humans could provide. Transport ships, medical supplies, refugees needed evacuation. The response that came back made the council delegates fall silent. Maintain distance from all human vessels. We are no longer merchants. We are no longer artists. Until this threat is eliminated, we are weapons. Keep your people away from ours. We cannot guarantee their safety. The message was signed by someone calling themselves the Lord Commander of the Human Defense Force, a position that had not existed for 300 years. The galaxy was about to learn what humans had tried so hard to forget. They were about to see why the devourers had hidden for 800 years. The war gods were awake, and they remembered everything. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood in what used to be an art gallery on the human colony of New Terra. 2 weeks ago, this building displayed paintings and sculptures. Children came here on school trips. People enjoyed beauty and culture. Now it produced weapons. The transformation happened in less than 72 hours. The pretty building was just a shell. Underneath, manufacturing equipment had waited in hidden chambers. Equipment that now ran 24 hours a day making ammunition, armor, and drones. Sarah watched young people work the assembly lines. Some of them were barely 20 years old. They had been art students and musicians last month. Now they assembled weapons with practiced efficiency. Their hands knew what to do even though they had never been trained. It's the genetic memory, Dr. Yuki Tanaka explained. She was a biologist who used to study alien plants. Now she studied humans. When we rewrote ourselves 300 years ago, we didn't delete the knowledge. We buried it, locked it behind triggers. The distress call activated those triggers. So everyone just knows how to fight? Sarah asked. Not exactly. Different people carried different skills. Some have tactical knowledge. Others understand weapons. Some are natural leaders in combat situations. It's like we're all pieces of a military machine that was disassembled. Now we're putting it back together. Sarah felt it herself. She had been a diplomat, good with words and negotiation, but now she saw everything differently. When she looked at a room, she calculated firing lines. When she met someone, she assessed their combat capability. When she heard a plan, she found the weaknesses and strengths instantly. It frightened her. This was not who she chose to be, but it was who she was, who humans were underneath the peace and art and smiles. A young man approached her. His name was Marcus. 2 weeks ago, he taught music to children. Now he commanded a squadron of attack drones. Ambassador, we're ready for the demonstration, he said. His voice was calm and cold. Nothing like the cheerful music teacher she remembered. They walked to the testing range outside the city. The Galactic Council had sent observers. The Krathax, the Valorians, even the proud Velkrin came to see what humans could do. The Krathax commander laughed when he saw the human soldiers. They were small compared to his warriors. They had no natural armor or claws. They carried weapons, but they looked fragile. "This is what you offer the council?" the commander said. "We face extinction and you send us artists playing soldier." Sarah said nothing. She simply nodded to Marcus. The demonstration began. Human soldiers moved through a mock battlefield. They did not charge like the Krathax. They did not rely on shields like the Velkrin. They moved like water, like shadows. They used the terrain. They worked together with perfect coordination. Drones filled the air. Not clumsy military drones, smart ones. Each controlled by human neural implants that had activated 2 weeks ago. The drones acted like extensions of the soldiers themselves. The enemy targets were destroyed in 90 seconds. The human soldiers took 0 casualties. They used 1/10 the ammunition the Krathax would have needed. "Efficiency," Sarah explained. "We don't waste anything. Not bullets. Not lives, not time. We learned that lesson in the War of Ashes. Every resource matters. Every life matters. So we win fast and clean." The Krathax commander stopped laughing. The demonstration continued. Humans showed psychological warfare tactics that confused the simulated enemy AI. They showed how to turn an enemy's strengths into weaknesses. They showed weapons the galaxy had never imagined. One weapon made the alien observers step back in fear. It was called the Silence. It did not explode. It did not burn. It simply erased. Matter touched by the silence stopped existing. Not destroyed. Erased. Gone as if it had never been. "That is impossible," a Velkrin scientist whispered. "That violates thermodynamics." "Where does the matter go?" "We don't know," Dr. Tanaka admitted. "We created it during the War of Ashes. We used it 3 times. Then we buried it because we were afraid of it. We still are, but we're more afraid of the Devourers." The council observers gathered together. They spoke in quiet voices. Sarah could hear them arguing. Some wanted human help. Others feared what humans had become. "You are not the species we knew," the Valorian delegate said finally. Her petals had closed in distress. "What happened to the peaceful merchants? The artists? The diplomats?" "We are still here," Sarah said. "But we are also what we always were. Survivors, adapters. We became peaceful because we chose peace. Now we choose war. Because we must." "And after?" the Krathax commander asked. His respect was clear now. "And his fear? After the Devourers are defeated?" "What then?" Sarah did not have an answer. She wondered the same thing. "Once you wake a weapon, can you put it back to sleep?" The council made their decision. They gave humans full military authority. Not because they wanted to, because they had no choice. The Devourers were winning everywhere. Only humans offered hope, but that hope came with a price. The council's ethics committee raised concerns. Human tactics were too brutal, too efficient, too willing to sacrifice. One human squad held a position for 3 days while surrounded. When relief forces arrived, all the humans were dead, but so were 3,000 Devourers. "They could have retreated," a Valorian officer said, distressed. "We would have let them fall back." "Why did they stay and die?" "Because retreat would have cost more lives overall," Sarah explained. "They ran the numbers. Staying and fighting saved more people in the end, so they stayed." "That is monstrous. That is war," Sarah said quietly. "The kind of war humanity is good at. The kind we hoped never to fight again." The first major battle came 2 weeks later. The Devourers attacked the colony world Epsilon 7, home to 4 million Velkrin civilians. The Council fleet tried to defend it. They lost 60% of their ships in the first hour. Then the human fleet arrived. It was smaller than the Council fleet. Only 30 ships. But those ships moved like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. They did not form defensive lines. They attacked. They darted into the Devourer swarm like wolves among sheep. Human ships were not heavily armored. They relied on speed and unpredictability. When the Devourers tried to swarm them, the humans split apart. When the Devourers spread out to chase, the humans regrouped and attacked weak points. They did not fight fair. They used the Council ships as shields. They baited the Devourers into firing on their own vessels. They hacked the hive mind's communication and fed it false data. In 3 hours, the Devourers retreated. It was their first defeat since waking, The galaxy watched in awe and horror. Humans had saved Epsilon 7, but the cost was clear. 10 human ships destroyed, 3,000 humans dead. They died buying time for the civilians to evacuate. They died completing objectives. They died winning. And the humans who survived did not celebrate. They did not mourn. They simply moved to the next battle. Cold, efficient, unstoppable. The merchants and artists were gone. The war gods had taken their place. And deep in human space, in the bunkers on Earth, weapons even more terrible continued to wake. The silence was nothing compared to what waited in those sealed vaults. Weapons that could end star systems. Weapons that could rewrite reality. Weapons that proved why humanity had chosen to forget. Why they had buried their past. Because the most dangerous thing in the galaxy was not the devourers. It was what humans became when you threatened their survival. It was the cold calculation that said any price was acceptable. Any sacrifice necessary. Any weapon justified. The war gods were awake. And the galaxy trembled. The devourer hive mind had consumed galaxies. It had existed for millions of years. It had faced countless species across the stars. All of them had fallen eventually, but now it faced something it did not understand. Humans fought wrong. They did not follow the patterns other species used. They sacrificed when they should preserve. They attacked when they should defend. They died when dying made no logical sense, and somehow, they were winning. Admiral Marcus Webb commanded the human fleet from the bridge of the warship Prometheus. The ship had been a civilian transport 3 weeks ago. Now it bristled with weapons that should not exist. Weapons humans had sworn never to use again. Devourer fleet detected, his tactical officer reported. 300 vessels. They're moving to attack the Velcrin homeworld. Marcus studied the holographic display. The Devourers had numbers. They had coordination. They had the advantage. Do we have the planet cracker online? He asked. The weapons officer hesitated. She was young. 25 years old. She remembered being a botanist. That life felt like a dream now. Yes, sir. But the Council banned its use. They said it was too dangerous. The Council isn't fighting this war, we are. Activate it. The planet cracker was a human invention from the War of Ashes. It used gravity waves to tear a world apart from the inside. Humans had built 12 of them. They had used 3. Then they had buried them all and tried to forget they existed. Now Marcus was about to use number 4. We're not targeting the Velcrin homeworld, he clarified. There's a dead moon in that system. No atmosphere, no life. Perfect test, the weapon fired. It took 3 seconds. The moon simply came apart. No explosion, no fire. It just stopped being a moon and became an expanding cloud of rock and dust. The Devourer fleet stopped advancing. The hive mind was confused. It had seen weapons before, but this was different. This was casual destruction of a celestial body. This was power beyond what it expected from these small creatures. Send them a message, Marcus ordered. Tight beam. Their command ship only. What message, sir? Tell them that was a demonstration. Tell them the next one hits their fleet. Tell them they have 10 minutes to withdraw or we erase 300 of their ships from existence. The communications officer looked uncomfortable. Sir, that's a bluff. The planet cracker needs 2 hours to recharge. They don't know that. Send the message. The Devourer fleet hesitated. For the first time since waking, the hive mind felt something it had not experienced in millions of years. Doubt. The fleet withdrew. The Velcrin homeworld was saved without firing another shot. But the cost was clear. The galaxy now knew humans had weapons that could destroy planets. The fear in the council chambers was palpable. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood before the council trying to explain. Trying to justify. But how could she explain the cold logic of total war? You destroyed a moon to prove a point, the Valorian delegate said. Her petals shook with distress. What else will you destroy? Whatever it takes to win, Sarah said simply. That's what you asked us to do. You asked us to save the galaxy. We're doing it. Not like this. Not with such brutality. Sarah felt tired. She had not slept properly in weeks. None of the humans had. They were running on combat stimulants and genetic memory and the cold certainty that losing meant extinction. You want us to fight pretty, she said, to follow rules, to be honorable. But the Devourers don't care about honor. They care about consuming everything. So we fight the way that wins. We use psychology. We use terror. We use overwhelming force. Because that's what works. The council argued for hours. But in the end, they let humans continue. Because the humans were winning, fleet battles became human specialties. Not because humans had better ships. They didn't, but they had better tactics. They understood something the other species didn't. War was not about honor. It was about winning. Human boarding parties attacked devourer ships using tactics that horrified other species. They didn't wear heavy armor. They wore light suits that let them move fast. They carried weapons designed to spread fear and confusion. One weapon was called the Shriek. It emitted sounds that drove the devourers insane. The hive mind relied on coordination. The Shriek destroyed that coordination. Individual devourers began attacking each other. Another weapon was biological. A virus designed specifically to target devourer neural tissue. It spread through their ships like wildfire. It didn't kill them. It made them suffer. It made them afraid. This is chemical warfare, a Krathax general protested. This is against the galactic conventions. The devourers are not signatories to any convention, Marcus replied. And we're not trying to make them surrender. We're trying to make them extinct. That word hung in the air. Extinct. Dr. Tanaka pulled Sarah aside one night in the command center. The biologist looked haunted. I've been researching our history, she said quietly. The sealed records. From 800 years ago when the devourers first came to Earth. What did you find? We didn't just defeat them. We hunted them. We tracked them to their breeding grounds. We found their home system. Sarah felt cold. And we killed them all. Every ship. Every nest. Every spawning pool. We left one group alive, just enough to survive. We wanted them to remember. We wanted them to tell other devourers what happened when they attacked. Humanity. That's genocide. That's what saved Earth. The devourers fled to the other side of the galaxy and hid for 800 years. They only came back because they thought we were gone, thought we were extinct, or changed. Sarah understood now. They didn't know we were the same species. The peaceful merchants and artists. They didn't realize we were the same humans who almost exterminated them. But they're learning now, Tanaka said. Every battle, every weapon we deploy, they're remembering. The hive mind has racial memory just like we do. They're starting to remember what we did to them. And they were terrified. The war turned. The devourers began retreating from human fleets. They avoided confrontation. They ran instead of fighting. The hive mind that had consumed galaxies was fleeing from creatures barely 2 meters tall, but human commanders did not let them run. They pursued. They hunted. They followed the devourers across star systems. Some human officers began to enjoy it. That was the danger Sarah saw. The weapons had woken. The instincts had activated, but so had something else. The capacity for cruelty, the enjoyment of victory, the thrill of the hunt. We're becoming what we were, Sarah said to Marcus one day. During the War of Ashes, we're becoming monsters. Marcus looked at her with cold eyes. We're becoming what we need to be, what we've always been, God killers. We're the species that looks at impossible odds and wins anyway. That's not monstrous. That's human. And after, when the devourers are gone, then we bury it again. Like we did before. Will we be able to? Or will we turn these weapons on each other again? Marcus had no answer. No one did. The war gods were awake and winning, but the price was becoming clear. Not just the lives lost in battle, but the cost to humanity's soul. They had chosen to be peaceful 300 years ago. They had buried their capacity for violence. Now that capacity was unleashed again, and everyone wondered if they could ever put it back. The human fleet cornered the last major devourer force at the galactic rim. 3 years had passed since the war began. The devourers had been pushed back system by system. Their numbers had decreased from millions of ships to barely 50,000. Admiral Marcus Webb stood on the bridge of Prometheus and watched the enemy fleet on his screens. Behind him, the combined human armada waited, 5,000 warships, each one crewed by humans who had forgotten what peace felt like. We have them, his tactical officer said. Her voice carried satisfaction. After 3 years of fighting, victory was close. But Marcus felt no joy. He felt empty. He had been a merchant captain once. He had transported grain and textiles. He had enjoyed the quiet of space. Now he was a killer. They all were. Ambassador Sarah Chen entered the bridge. She looked older than 3 years should account for. War-aged people in ways time alone could not. The Council is demanding we let them surrender, she said. The Devourers don't surrender. They're a hive mind. They only understand extinction or survival. Then they want us to accept a ceasefire. Let the Devourers leave the galaxy. Never return, Marcus laughed without humor. That's what we did last time. 800 years ago. We let some survive. We let them run. They came back. If we let them go now, they'll return in another few centuries. Maybe when we're peaceful again. When we've forgotten again. So what do you propose? The final solution. It's ready. We can deploy it within the hour. Sarah felt her blood turn cold. She had read about the final solution. It was the worst weapon humanity had ever created. Worse than the planet cracker. Worse than the silence. It was a reality bomb. When detonated, it would create a cascade effect across space-time. Everything within 100 light-years would cease to exist. Not destroyed. Erased from reality itself. Past, present, and future. As if it had never been. The Devourers would be extinct. Completely. Forever. But the weapon was unpredictable. Calculations showed a 5% chance it would not stop at 100 light-years. It might cascade across the galaxy. It might spread forever, unraveling reality itself. You want to risk destroying everything to kill them? Sarah asked. I want to make sure they never threaten anyone again. 5% risk is acceptable. Acceptable? Marcus, listen to yourself. You sound like a machine. Where's the merchant captain who loved looking at stars? He died, along with 3 million other humans. Along with everyone we couldn't save. We tried peace. We tried mercy. It doesn't work. The only language the universe understands is force. Sarah looked around the bridge. The crew were young. Most of them had been children when the war started. They had grown up knowing only fighting. They had become efficient killers. They followed orders without question. She saw the danger now. Not from the Devourers, from humans themselves. If we use that weapon, we're not defeating them, she said quietly. We're proving they were right to fear us. We're proving we're monsters. Maybe we are, Marcus replied. Maybe that's what it takes to survive. Sarah made a decision. She pulled rank she technically didn't have. She contacted the Council. She told them what Marcus planned to do. The Council was horrified. They demanded the humans stand down. They threatened sanctions. They begged. But Marcus had the weapon. And he had the fleet. And after 3 years of war, he didn't care what the Council wanted. Launch the final solution, he ordered. The weapons officer's hand moved to the controls. Then stopped. Sir, I can't. My hand won't move. Other officers reported the same thing. They wanted to follow orders. Their minds agreed with Marcus. But their bodies refused. Dr. Tanaka had been monitoring the situation from Earth. Her voice came through on the communications channel. It's the genetic memory, she explained. The kill switch. Our ancestors who created the Great Forgetting built in safeguards. Weapons can be awakened when survival demands it. But genocide? Complete extinction of another intelligent species? That triggers a block. We made sure we couldn't do it. Even at our most desperate, Marcus stared at his crew. They looked ashamed, confused. They wanted to follow his orders but couldn't. Override it, he demanded. There must be a way. There is, Tanaka said. But it requires unanimous agreement. Every human. All 8 billion of us. We all have to choose extinction over mercy. That's the safeguard. We have to all become monsters together. Or none of us can. Marcus knew what that meant. 8 billion humans would never unanimously agree to anything. There would always be some who chose mercy. Some who believed in second chances. Some who remembered that humans had almost destroyed themselves once and pulled back from the edge. The kill switch couldn't be overridden. Sarah stepped forward. We have another option. We can seal them away. There's a region of space beyond the rim. Dead stars. No habitable worlds. We can trap them there, set up monitoring stations. If they ever try to leave, we can stop them. That's what we did before, Marcus said bitterly. No. Before, we let them leave. We gave them mercy and forgot about them. This time we watch. We remember. We stay ready. We don't forget who we are or what we're capable of. But we don't cross the line into genocide either. The debate raged for hours. The human fleet waited. The Devourers waited, their hive mind sensing the hesitation. Finally, Marcus made his choice. Prepare the containment field generators. We're sealing them away. The operation took 6 months. Humans surrounded the Dead Star region. They built massive field generators powered by stars themselves. The Devourers were trapped in a prison light years across. It wasn't perfect. They could survive their breed weight, but they couldn't leave. And humanity would watch. Forever if necessary. The war ended not with extinction, but with imprisonment. The galaxy celebrated. They called it a great victory. They praised human mercy for sparing the Devourers. They didn't understand that mercy had nothing to do with it. Humans had simply looked into the darkness and decided not to become it. But the cost was clear. 3 million humans had died. The peaceful merchants and artists were gone. Every human now knew what they were capable of. What they had always been capable of. The great forgetting began again. Humanity called it the second forgetting. The weapons were sealed. The bunkers were closed. The warships were converted back to merchants and transports. Children were taught to be artists again, to be diplomats, to prefer peace. But this time there was a difference. The memories were not buried as deep. The kill switches remained active. The monitoring stations at the Galactic Rim stayed operational. Humanity chose peace, but they remembered war. Sarah Chen stood in the rebuilt art gallery on New Terra. It displayed paintings and sculptures again. Children came for school trips. People enjoyed beauty and culture. But in the basement, hidden but not sealed, the weapons remained. Close enough to reach. Close enough to use. Just in case. She watched the children paint pictures of stars and planets. Peaceful images. Beautiful images. She hoped they would never need to become what their parents had been. What their species could be. But she knew the truth. The war gods were not gone. They were sleeping. Waiting. Ready. A young girl approached Sarah. She held up a painting of Earth surrounded by flowers. "Do you like it?" The girl asked. "My teacher says humans are artists. We make beautiful things." Sarah smiled. It was a real smile this time. Warm and gentle. "Yes," she said. "That's what we are. Artists who make beautiful things." She didn't add the rest. Didn't say what every human now knew but rarely spoke about. They were artists who made beautiful things. Until someone threatened them. Then they became something else entirely. The galaxy had learned what humanity truly was. Not just one thing or the other. Not just artists or warriors, both, always both. They were dormant war gods who chose to be peaceful, who worked hard to stay peaceful, who taught their children to prefer peace, but who would become gods of war again if necessary. The galaxy would never forget that lesson, and neither would humanity. The girl ran back to her painting. Sarah watched her go. Then she looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there at the Galactic Rim, the Devourers waited in their prison, watching, remembering, and humanity watched back, remembering too. The war gods slept, but they were not dead. They were never dead. They were just waiting, always waiting, ready to wake when needed. That was the truth the galaxy had forgotten, the truth humanity had tried to forget. Some species evolved to be strong, some evolved to be fast, some evolved to be smart. Humans evolved to survive, no matter what it took, no matter what they had to become. And that made them the most dangerous thing in the galaxy, not because they were cruel, but because they were willing to do whatever survival demanded, even become monsters, even stare into the darkness. And then, when the danger passed, they were willing to step back from the edge, to choose peace again, to bury the weapons and teach their children to paint. That was what made them war gods. Not the capacity for violence, but the capacity to choose when to use it and when to walk away. The galaxy understood now. Humanity was not what they appeared to be. They were something far more complex, far more dangerous, far more precious. They were hope. That intelligence could choose peace. That warriors could choose mercy. That war gods could choose to sleep, as long as they were allowed to sleep. But if anyone was foolish enough to wake them again, well, the Devourers could tell them how that ended. Trapped in a prison of dead stars, alive but defeated, surviving but not living. The galaxy would remember, and so would humanity. Remember what they were, what they chose to be, and what they would become again if they had no choice. The war gods slept, and everyone was safer for it.